The Pacific theater of World War II presented unique challenges for the United States Navy. Unlike the European front, where airfields were relatively fixed and the terrain allowed for traditional air combat, the vast expanses of the Pacific Ocean required a different approach to aerial warfare. Aircraft carriers became the primary basis from which the Navy could project power, and the aircraft that operated from them had to be not only fast and agile, but also durable enough to withstand the harsh realities of naval combat. Among these, the Grumman F-6F Hellcat emerged as the linchpin of American air power, effectively tipping the balance in the Pacific skies. Introduced in 1943, the F-6F Hellcat was the culmination of lessons learned from the early stages of the Pacific War. American pilots had faced significant challenges against the Mitsubishi A6M-0, a highly maneuverable and deceptively resilient Japanese fighter. The Zero's agility and lightweight design allowed it to dominate early engagements, often outturning and outmaneuvering American aircraft. In response, Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation designed the Hellcat to counter these advantages while leveraging American industrial strength and tactical doctrine. The Hellcat was intended as a carrier-based fighter that could be produced quickly and in large numbers without sacrificing performance. Its design focused on survivability and firepower rather than trying to match the Zero in pure aerobatic capability.
The aircraft's role was not only to secure air superiority, but also to protect the carriers that served as floating air bases, ensuring the Navy could maintain its operational reach across thousands of miles of ocean. At the heart of the Hellcat was the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, capable of producing 2,000 horsepower. This powerful radial engine allowed the F-6F to reach speeds of up to 380 miles per hour, while maintaining exceptional climb rates and endurance. Its range of approximately 1,090 miles gave the Navy the operational flexibility to engage enemy aircraft far from friendly bases, a critical factor in the vast expanses of the Pacific theater. The Hellcat's airframe was robust, built to absorb significant damage and remain operational. Unlike many lighter fighters, the F-6F could sustain multiple hits and still return to its carrier, often saving the lives of its pilot and preserving valuable aircraft. Its rugged landing gear and reinforced fuselage were optimized for the rigors of carrier operations, where takeoffs and landings on pitching decks required extraordinary structural resilience. By mid-1943, the introduction of the Hellcat marked a turning point. Its combination of speed, firepower, and durability made it the premier fighter of the U.S. Navy, capable of challenging the once dominant Japanese Zero. Over 12,000 units were produced by the end of the war, a testament to both its effectiveness and the United States' industrial capacity.
The Hellcat's operational record was staggering. It was credited with shooting down over 5,000 enemy aircraft in the Pacific, accounting for the majority of American air victories in the theater. Its success not only reduced Japanese air power, but also protected the aircraft carriers that were vital to the Navy's island-hopping campaigns. Pilots often described the Hellcat as a flying tank with wings, emphasizing the sense of security and confidence it provided in combat. In conclusion, the Grumman F-6F Hellcat was more than just an aircraft. It was a symbol of American ingenuity and strategic adaptation. By combining technical superiority with tactical doctrine and industrial production, the Hellcat allowed the United States to dominate the Pacific skies, setting the stage for the eventual Allied victory in the region. Its legacy endures not only in the history books, but also in the restored color footage that captures the intensity, courage, and drama of the air war over the Pacific.
In the Pacific theater, the aircraft carrier was the true powerhouse of naval warfare. Unlike battleships, which dominated the surface war, carriers allowed fleets to project air power over vast distances, striking enemy positions hundreds of miles away without the need for traditional airfields. One of the most iconic examples of this innovation was the USS Yorktown and its sister ships, often referred to collectively as the Fighting Lady. These carriers were not merely ships, they were floating cities, fully equipped to launch, recover, and maintain squadrons of aircraft, all while under the constant threat of enemy attack. Understanding carrier operations is essential to comprehending how the United States Navy achieved air superiority in the Pacific. At their core, aircraft carriers served as mobile air bases. Each carrier could carry upwards of 90 to 100 aircraft, ranging from fighters like the F-6F Hellcat to dive bombers and torpedo planes. These ships were equipped with hangar decks for maintenance, fuel storage for extended operations, armories for munitions, and command centers to coordinate both naval and air operations. The carrier's primary mission was to project air power, defend itself against enemy aircraft, and support amphibious operations on distant islands. Unlike a land base, a carrier could move constantly, making it a difficult target.
Its mobility allowed commanders to strike unexpectedly and withdraw before enemy forces could mount an effective response. However, this flexibility came with tremendous complexity. Every movement of aircraft, crew, and equipment had to be synchronized to avoid accidents on the tight confines of the flight deck. On a carrier, there was no margin for error. One misstep could result in catastrophic damage or loss of life. The operational success of carriers relied on a combination of engineering ingenuity and precise coordination. One of the most important innovations was the hydraulic catapult system, which could launch fully loaded aircraft off a relatively short deck in a matter of seconds. The catapult converted stored hydraulic energy into a sudden burst of speed, allowing fighters and bombers to reach takeoff velocity even under the constraints of a moving, pitching ship. Equally important was the design of folding wings. Aircraft designed for carrier use had wings that could be folded upward, drastically reducing their footprint in the hangar and allowing more planes to be stored and maintained in limited space. With these innovations, a single carrier could carry nearly 100 aircraft ready to strike at a moment's notice. The deck itself functioned as a highly choreographed workspace, often described by sailors as a mechanical ballet.
Aircraft were moved into position by deck crews, guided into catapults, refueled, and armed in precise sequences that minimized downtime. Coordinating hundreds of personnel, each with specialized roles, was a monumental task. Pilots relied on clear communication, hand signals, and an unspoken understanding of timing to ensure that launches and recoveries proceeded safely, even during the chaos of battle. Among the most crucial members of the carrier crew were the landing signal officers, or LSOs. These officers stood at the stern of the flight deck and guided incoming aircraft to safe landings using a series of colored paddles and lights. LSOs were responsible for judging the aircraft's speed, angle of approach, and glide path, often making split-second decisions that could mean the difference between a safe landing and a fatal crash. Their skill and courage were vital in ensuring that pilots could recover safely, particularly after intense combat missions. Another essential piece of equipment was the arresting gear, a system of cables stretched across the flight deck. When a landing aircraft's tailhook caught one of these cables, the ship's arresting gear absorbed the plane's kinetic energy, bringing it to a stop within a matter of seconds. Considering that fully loaded fighters and bombers could weigh over 5 tons, the arresting gear was a marvel of engineering, capable of decelerating these aircraft safely without causing damage to the ship or plane.
The coordination between LSOs, deck crews, and the arresting gear operators exemplified the intricate teamwork required on a carrier. Each member had to perform their role flawlessly while remaining aware of the movements of aircraft, fuel trucks, and other personnel. Even in the heat of combat, with anti-aircraft fire and potential kamikaze attacks threatening the vessel, this choreography continued, allowing the carrier to maintain operational tempo. The ability of carriers to launch and recover aircraft efficiently
gave the United States Navy a significant strategic advantage. While land-based airfields were fixed and vulnerable, carriers could strike targets hundreds of miles away, then relocate before enemy forces could respond. They served as the nucleus of naval task forces, often accompanied by cruisers, destroyers, and battleships to provide anti-aircraft defense, reconnaissance, and fire support. During major campaigns, carriers enabled the United States to conduct coordinated strikes across multiple islands, disrupt Japanese supply lines, and establish air superiority in contested regions. The carriers themselves became symbols of American ingenuity and resilience. They were floating fortresses, yet delicate instruments of war that required careful handling and expert coordination. The operations of aircraft carriers, such as USS Yorktown, the Fighting Lady, represent a remarkable combination of ingenuity, strategy, and human skill. These ships were far more than platforms for aircraft. They were hubs of command and control, maintenance, and logistics that made sustained aerial warfare possible across the Pacific. Hydraulic catapults, folding wings, landing signal officers, and arresting gear were not mere technologies. They were enablers of strategy, allowing the United States to dominate the skies while keeping pilots and aircraft alive. Understanding the inner workings of a carrier provides insight into how naval aviation transformed World War II. The carrier was a floating city of war, a mechanical ballet performed on the high seas, and the backbone of America's air power in the Pacific. In the next chapters, we will see how the Hellcats, guided by LSOs and supported by this incredible machinery, engaged enemy aircraft, executed daring strikes, and helped turn the tide of war in favor of the Allies. The aerial battles over the Pacific were not only tests of skill and courage, they were also laboratories of innovation and documentation. As the United States Navy fought to gain air superiority, it became clear that traditional methods of evaluating combat effectiveness were insufficient. Pilots often returned from missions claiming victories, but without concrete proof, these reports were difficult to verify. To address this, the Navy introduced a technological marvel, the gun camera. This device would not only document engagements in vivid detail, but also provide invaluable feedback for refining tactics and training pilots. The gun camera was a small, mechanically synchronized camera mounted on the aircraft in alignment with its machine guns. Whenever the pilot fired, the camera would activate, capturing a sequence of images or film that recorded the trajectory of the bullets and the target in real time.
This innovation allowed commanders to confirm enemy kills and analyze combat engagements in a level of detail never seen before. Beyond mere documentation, gun cameras served as a psychological tool. Pilots understood that every engagement was recorded, encouraging precision and discipline in combat. They also provided an extraordinary historical record, showing the intensity of dogfights, the tactics used by both sides, and the devastating effectiveness of American firepower. Footage captured by gun cameras later became iconic, offering civilians and historians alike a rare window into the realities of aerial warfare over the Pacific. The use of gun cameras highlighted a fundamental difference in combat philosophy between American and Japanese pilots. The United States Navy emphasized durability, firepower, and coordinated tactics. Aircraft like the F-6F Hellcat were heavily armored, with self-sealing fuel tanks and reinforced fuselages designed to absorb damage while maintaining maneuverability. The Hellcat carried 6.5 caliber machine guns, which could unleash a concentrated burst of fire, devastating lightly armored Japanese aircraft.
American doctrine focused on teamwork and energy management. Pilots were trained to maintain altitude and speed advantages, attack in coordinated formations, and use dives and climbs to control engagements. The goal was to engage the enemy from a position of strength, maximize the effectiveness of firepower, and minimize risk to the aircraft and pilot. This approach emphasized calculated aggression, leveraging technological superiority and disciplined tactics rather than relying on pure dogfighting skill. In contrast, Japanese pilots relied on aircraft like the Mitsubishi A6M0, which were lighter, faster in turns, and extremely maneuverable. Their doctrine emphasized agility and close-range combat. Zeros could outturn most American fighters, allowing Japanese pilots to evade fire and position themselves behind their opponent for lethal attacks. However, these aircraft were fragile, with minimal armor and vulnerable fuel tanks, making them highly susceptible to concentrated fire. While the Zero's agility was unmatched, it came at the cost of survivability. The clash of doctrines became evident in every aerial engagement. American pilots operating in durable and well-armed aircraft learned to exploit the weaknesses of the Japanese fighters.
Instead of attempting to outmaneuver the enemy in tight dogfights, they would dive from higher altitudes, unleash a controlled barrage of gunfire, and then climb back to a safe position, an approach that the gun camera would faithfully record. Central to the effectiveness of American pilots was the concept of the convergence zone. The F-6F Hellcat's 6 machine guns were calibrated so that their bullets converged at a specific distance, usually around 300 yards. This created a deadly concentration of firepower, maximizing the chance of hitting an enemy aircraft with every burst. Pilots trained extensively to approach targets within this zone, ensuring that their attacks were precise and lethal. The convergence zone also dictated American tactics in combat. Pilots would maneuver to position the enemy within this effective range before opening fire, rather than relying on continuous sprays of ammunition from longer distances. This emphasis on precision reduced wasted ammunition, increased kill probability, and reinforced disciplined shooting habits among pilots. The gun camera provided feedback on each engagement, allowing pilots to adjust their approach, improve timing, and refine their aim based on real evidence. Training missions often simulated combat conditions, with pilots practicing attacks on towed targets or simulated enemy aircraft. In these exercises, instructors would analyze gun camera footage to highlight mistakes and reinforce successful techniques.
This constant loop of combat, observation, and adjustment created a cadre of highly skilled aviators who could execute complex tactics with confidence and precision. The combination of durable aircraft, coordinated tactics, and gun camera documentation transformed the American approach to aerial combat. Pilots developed a systematic method for defeating the enemy: maintain energy advantage, attack in a controlled manner, exploit the convergence zone, and always rely on teamwork. This methodology minimized losses while maximizing enemy attrition. During major battles, such as the Marianas Turkey Shoot and operations over the Philippines, gun cameras recorded hundreds of engagements. These records confirmed the overwhelming effectiveness of American air power, showing entire formations of Japanese aircraft being destroyed in coordinated attacks. The footage also served as a training tool for new pilots, providing visual examples of successful tactics and enemy vulnerabilities.
The gun camera was more than a technological curiosity. It was a revolutionary tool that enhanced both accountability and strategy in the Pacific Air War. By capturing real-time combat, it provided commanders with accurate data on performance, validated victories, and guided improvements in tactics. Combined with the durability of American aircraft and the discipline of their pilots, it underscored the strategic differences that gave the United States Navy a decisive edge. In essence, gun cameras allowed the Navy to see, learn, and adapt like never before. They documented the lethal ballet of the skies, where Hellcats engaged nimble Zeros in high-speed duels, and every burst of machine gun fire was recorded for analysis and refinement. The Pacific Air War was not just a contest of skill, but also a demonstration of how technology, doctrine, and disciplined strategy could converge to dominate the battlefield. The Pacific War was not a single battle fought in isolation.
It was a vast series of campaigns that stretched across thousands of miles of ocean, from the Solomons to the Marianas. Each operation built upon the last, slowly chipping away at Japanese defenses and establishing strategic footholds for future assaults. The success of these campaigns relied on coordinated carrier-based air power, the skill of pilots flying fighters like the F-6F Hellcat, and the logistical mastery of the United States Navy.
This chapter highlights several key campaigns that turned the tide of war in the Pacific. In 1943, American forces undertook one of their first deep strikes into Japanese-held territory, the attack on Pulau Marquess. Located far behind enemy lines, Marquess Island was a small but strategically important outpost, fortified with airfields and coastal defenses. The objective of the operation was not necessarily to capture the island immediately, but to divert Japanese attention and resources, drawing their forces away from other, more critical fronts. Carrier-based aircraft launched a series of precise strikes, targeting airfields, bunkers, and defensive installations. Pilots had to navigate long overwater flights, often without visual landmarks, relying on navigation skills honed through rigorous training. The operation demonstrated the reach and flexibility of carrier aviation, proving that the United States could strike deep into Japanese territory with relative speed and effectiveness. Marquess Island also provided valuable intelligence on Japanese defensive tactics, which informed planning for subsequent campaigns in the Central Pacific. By 1944, the United States had moved to attack the Central Pacific, targeting the Marshall Islands. Two of the most significant operations during this phase were the assaults on Kwajalein Atoll and Truk Lagoon. Kwajalein, a heavily fortified Japanese base, represented a critical step in the island-hopping strategy.
Carrier aircraft conducted systematic bombing raids, softening defenses and disrupting supply lines. Once the ground forces landed, the stage was set for swift conquest with minimal casualties compared to earlier, less coordinated operations. Truk Lagoon, often referred to as the Gibraltar of the Pacific, was considered Japan's most formidable stronghold in the Central Pacific. Its natural lagoon offered protection to a large fleet of warships, while extensive anti-aircraft emplacements defended against aerial assault. Despite these challenges, American carriers launched a series of concentrated attacks, employing dive bombers and fighters in coordinated waves. The success of the operation crippled Japan's naval presence in the region, sinking dozens of ships and aircraft while demonstrating the devastating reach of carrier-based air power. The fall of Kwajalein and the neutralization of Truk marked a turning point, effectively dismantling Japan's Central Pacific defensive line and paving the way for advances toward the Marianas and the Philippines. Perhaps the most dramatic example of American air superiority came during the Battle of the Philippine Sea, infamously dubbed the Marianas Turkey Shoot. As the Japanese fleet attempted to defend the Mariana Islands, including Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, they launched hundreds of aircraft in a desperate effort to repel the invasion.
What followed was one of the largest aerial battles in history, in which American pilots, flying Hellcats and other fighters, decimated the Japanese air arm. The term Turkey Shoot arose from the lopsided nature of the engagement. In a single day, American pilots shot down 369 Japanese aircraft, inflicting devastating losses that the Japanese Navy could not easily replace. The success was not merely a result of superior numbers. It reflected careful planning, disciplined execution, and the tactical doctrines honed over years of training and combat experience. Gun cameras captured these engagements, providing concrete evidence of the effectiveness of American tactics, including the use of energy fighting, coordinated squadron attacks, and the exploitation of the convergence zone for maximum firepower. This battle had strategic consequences beyond the immediate destruction of Japanese aircraft. By neutralizing much of Japan's carrier air strength, the United States secured uncontested air superiority over the Marianas, allowing ground forces to land with minimal interference from the enemy. From this position, the U.S. could launch long-range bombing raids on the Japanese home islands, significantly intensifying pressure on Japan's war economy and military infrastructure. The Marianas Turkey Shoot symbolized the moment when the balance of power in the Pacific firmly shifted in favor of the Allies. These campaigns illustrate the evolution of American strategy in the Pacific.
Each operation built upon lessons learned from the last. The long-range strike at Marcus Island emphasized precision and navigation. The assaults on Kwajalein and Truk demonstrated the power of coordinated carrier air-ground operations, and the Marianas Campaign showcased the culmination of pilot training, doctrine, and technological innovation. Carrier-based aviation emerged as the central instrument of American military strategy. The ability to launch hundreds of aircraft simultaneously, maintain air superiority, and conduct long-range strikes allowed the United States to bypass heavily fortified positions when necessary and focus on strategic objectives that would ultimately cripple Japan's ability to wage war. The integration of Hellcats, dive bombers, and torpedo planes into a coordinated air arm demonstrated the sophistication of American planning and the effectiveness of combined arms operations in the maritime environment. From Marcus Island to the Marianas, the Pacific campaigns of 1943-1944 reveal how carrier-based air power reshaped naval warfare. The operations were not isolated skirmishes, but carefully orchestrated strikes that combined intelligence, logistics, training, and technological innovation. They allowed the United States to project power across vast distances, destroy enemy fleets and air forces, and lay the groundwork for eventual victory.
These campaigns underscored the importance of adaptability, coordination, and relentless execution, demonstrating that the balance of power in the Pacific could be shifted through superior strategy, disciplined tactics, and the relentless application of air power from the decks of aircraft carriers. The success of these operations set the stage for the final phases of the Pacific War, where the threat of kamikaze attacks and the grueling battles for Okinawa and Iwo Jima would test the mettle of both pilots and carriers in unprecedented ways. As the Pacific War drew into its final stages, the United States Navy faced a threat unlike any seen before: the kamikaze. These suicide attacks represented a radical shift in Japanese military strategy, where the pilot's life was sacrificed deliberately to inflict maximum damage on American ships. Unlike conventional aerial assaults, kamikaze attacks introduced a psychological dimension to naval warfare, testing the resilience, courage, and discipline of American sailors, while simultaneously challenging the technical capabilities of anti-aircraft defenses. The Battle of Okinawa, fought from April to June 1945, would become the ultimate proving ground for these harrowing tactics. The term kamikaze, meaning divine wind, evokes Japan's historical imagery of self-sacrifice for a higher purpose. In practice, kamikaze missions involved pilots intentionally crashing their aircraft, often loaded with explosives, into enemy ships.
This tactic emerged out of desperation. By 1944, Japan's conventional air power had been severely depleted, with experienced pilots lost and aircraft production struggling to meet demand. Unable to match the sheer numbers and technological advantage of the U.S. Navy, Japanese strategists turned to these extreme measures as a way to inflict maximum damage with limited resources.
Kamikaze attacks were psychologically devastating. Unlike conventional attacks that could be predicted and defended against with maneuvering and coordinated gunfire, suicide pilots introduced an element of unpredictability. Sailors aboard American carriers and battleships knew that each incoming aircraft could be a guided missile, and no skill or evasive maneuver could guarantee safety. The constant threat of these attacks weighed heavily on crews, forcing them to remain vigilant for days and weeks at a time, often under extreme heat and fatigue. Strategically, kamikaze tactics aimed to slow the American advance, inflict material losses, and demoralize both sailors and pilots. Even a single successful strike could cripple a ship, delay operations, and divert resources from offensive campaigns. While these attacks could not reverse Japan's decline, they demonstrated the lengths to which Japan was willing to go to defend its home islands. In response to the kamikaze threat, the U.S. Navy developed layered defensive measures to protect its vessels. Central to this defense was the dense network of anti-aircraft fire, often described as a wall of steel. Ships were outfitted with an array of anti-aircraft guns, ranging from rapid-firing 20mm and 40mm cannons to the heavier 5-inch dual-purpose mounts. Crews trained tirelessly to coordinate their fire, creating overlapping zones of defense that could intercept incoming aircraft before they reached the fleet.
Radar-directed fire control systems further enhanced this defensive network. By detecting incoming aircraft at long ranges, ships could open fire well before the enemy reached effective striking distance. Coordinated formations ensured that multiple ships could target the same threat, increasing the likelihood of neutralization. Pilots in the air also contributed to the defense, patrolling perimeters and engaging kamikaze planes before they can reach the fleet. Despite these measures, kamikaze attacks remained deadly. Many ships suffered damage or were sunk, and casualties were significant. However, the resilience of American sailors and the effectiveness of combined defensive tactics minimized losses compared to what might have been expected from such an unorthodox threat. The wall of steel became a testament to discipline, training, and technological adaptation in the face of desperate enemy tactics. Okinawa was the largest amphibious assault in the Pacific War and became the ultimate test of kamikaze defenses. The U.S. fleet, supporting a massive landing of ground forces, had to remain in position for extended periods, often under almost continuous threat from kamikaze attacks. The island's proximity to Japan made it a critical strategic objective. Securing Okinawa provided a staging area for the planned invasion of the Japanese home islands, as well as airfields for long-range bombing missions.
Over the course of the battle, thousands of Japanese aircraft attempted to strike the U.S. fleet. Kamikaze pilots, flying aircraft loaded with explosives, deliberately targeted carriers, battleships, and transport vessels. Despite intense anti-aircraft fire and fighter patrols, many planes reached their targets, causing significant damage. The psychological strain on sailors was immense. Crews worked around the clock, repairing ships, tending to the wounded, and maintaining vigilance while under constant threat of destruction. The Battle of Okinawa also highlighted the courage and ingenuity of American forces. Sailors devised innovative tactics to counter kamikaze attacks, including coordinated smokescreens, improved early warning radar systems, and rapid response fire teams. Pilots of carrier-based fighters conducted continuous patrols to intercept attackers far from the fleet. These combined measures reduced the potential destruction and allowed the U.S. to maintain operational tempo despite the relentless onslaught.
Okinawa became one of the bloodiest battles of the Pacific War, with staggering casualties on both sides. The kamikaze threat forced the U.S. Navy to innovate rapidly, blending technology, training, and teamwork to protect its fleet. While many ships were damaged and hundreds of sailors were killed, the ability of the fleet to endure and continue supporting ground operations demonstrated the effectiveness of American defensive doctrine. The psychological impact of kamikaze attacks also left a lasting impression. Sailors who faced the threat of suicide planes described the fear and tension as unlike anything else in their military experience. Yet these same experiences forged extraordinary resilience, discipline, and cohesion among crews, which would be critical for the final operations against Japan. The kamikaze attacks and the Battle of Okinawa represented the most dangerous phase of the Pacific War for the U.S. Navy. Japan's willingness to sacrifice pilots in suicide missions created an unprecedented threat, testing the limits of American technology, strategy, and courage. The fleet's response, a combination of layered anti-aircraft fire, coordinated fighter patrols, and disciplined crew operations, proved remarkably effective in mitigating the threat.
Okinawa demonstrated the deadly interplay of desperation and ingenuity in war. The kamikaze, while horrifying, could not stop the advance of the United States, but they inflicted significant material and psychological costs.
For the American sailors and pilots, the battle became a defining test of endurance, skill, and resolve, showcasing the courage required to maintain air and sea dominance in one of the most brutal environments of the Pacific theater. War is often measured in statistics: ships sunk, aircraft destroyed, or territories captured. Yet behind every number are human lives, experiences, and stories of courage. In the Pacific theater of World War II, few accounts capture the intensity, danger, and triumph of carrier-based aviation as vividly as that of Don McPherson, a U.S. Navy fighter pilot whose career exemplifies the bravery, skill, and resilience of American aviators. His story not only chronicles aerial victories, but also provides a deeply personal perspective on the events that shaped the conclusion of the war. Don McPherson's path to the skies began long before he set foot on an aircraft carrier. Like many young men of his generation, he was inspired by a sense of duty and a fascination with flight. Upon joining the Navy, he underwent rigorous training, mastering navigation, gunnery, formation flying, and carrier landings under some of the most challenging conditions imaginable. His training would prepare him for the Hellcat, the mainstay fighter of the Pacific Fleet, capable of withstanding damage while delivering devastating firepower. Assigned to a carrier in the Central Pacific, McPherson quickly distinguished himself as a skilled pilot.
His keen instincts, disciplined approach to combat, and adherence to tactical doctrine enabled him to excel in aerial engagements. Over the course of multiple missions, he achieved ace status, shooting down 5 enemy aircraft. Each encounter demanded precise timing, split-second decision-making, and mastery of aircraft capabilities, including exploiting the Hellcat's convergence zone and leveraging its durability in dogfights. McPherson's success was not a matter of luck. It was the product of training, strategy, and experience, reflecting the broader doctrine that guided American naval aviation in the Pacific. Beyond his personal combat achievements, McPherson bore witness to moments of profound historical significance. From a safe distance, he observed the detonation of the first atomic bomb, an event that would forever alter the trajectory of warfare and global politics. For McPherson and his fellow servicemen, the sight of the mushroom cloud was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a reminder of the unprecedented destructive power now at humanity's disposal. This experience underscored the stakes of the conflict and the weight of the decisions being made far from the front lines.
Later, McPherson was present aboard the USS Missouri for the formal surrender of Japan. The ship, floating in the calm waters of Tokyo Bay, became the stage for the symbolic conclusion of hostilities. Standing among sailors and dignitaries, McPherson observed the signing of the surrender documents, witnessing the end of a conflict that had consumed years of his life and claimed millions of others. The ceremony was not only a moment of relief and triumph, but also a solemn reminder of the human cost of war. For McPherson, it was a time for reflection, acknowledging both the victories and sacrifices that had brought the world to this moment. McPherson's recollections offer a rare window into the mindset of a combat pilot during the Pacific War. He often emphasized that success in aerial combat depended as much on mental preparation as technical skill. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act decisively despite it. Each mission carried the potential for extreme danger, from enemy aircraft, anti-aircraft fire, or the challenges of carrier landings in turbulent seas. Yet discipline, adherence to tactics, and trust in fellow pilots were essential for survival. He also reflected on the broader strategic context. Understanding doctrine, whether it was the use of energy tactics, coordinated squadron attacks, or the exploitation of the convergence sound, was vital.
The war was not won solely by individual heroism, but by the disciplined application of strategy and the ability to adapt quickly to rapidly changing circumstances. McPherson's experiences illustrated how well-trained pilots, operating within a coherent system, could dominate airspace, protect the fleet, and contribute to decisive victories. Sacrifice was another recurring theme in his reflections. McPherson often spoke of comrades lost during missions or in kamikaze attacks. Each loss underscored the dangers inherent in naval aviation and the shared responsibility borne by crews on the carriers. The bonds forged under such pressure were deep and enduring. The memory of fallen comrades served as a constant reminder of the human cost of war and the importance of resilience, courage, and solidarity. Looking back, McPherson viewed the conclusion of the Pacific War with a mixture of pride and solemnity. The surrender of Japan marked the culmination of years of relentless effort, innovation, and sacrifice. Yet for him and many others, the end of combat did not erase the memories of intense dogfights, the roar of engines, or the tension of landing on a pitching flight deck under threat of enemy attack. These experiences left a lasting imprint, shaping how veterans understood courage, duty, and the price of freedom. McPherson's story also serves as a bridge between historical events and personal experience.
While textbooks recount strategies, battles, and statistics, his reflections highlight the human dimension, the fear, determination, and resilience required to navigate a world engulfed in conflict. His life and service provide insight into what it meant to be part of a generation that confronted unprecedented challenges, embraced extraordinary responsibility, and helped secure victory in one of history's largest wars. Don McPherson's experiences encapsulate the personal dimension of the Pacific War. As an ace pilot, he demonstrated technical skill, tactical intelligence, and courage under fire. As a witness to historic events, the first atomic bomb and the Japanese surrender, he bore testament to the momentous nature of the conflict. His reflections remind us that beyond the strategy, technology, and statistics of war, there are human stories of resilience, sacrifice, and heroism. Through McPherson's eyes, we understand the realities of carrier-based aviation, the pressures of combat, and the broader significance of each mission in shaping the outcome of World War II. His narrative bridges the gap between history and lived experience, allowing us to appreciate both the extraordinary achievements and profound costs of the Pacific War. In remembering veterans like Don McPherson, we honor the courage, dedication, and sacrifice that made victory possible.